Hello, this is Josef Kubowski from Nimdzi Insights. Today, I have the lovely opportunity to speak with the phrase team here, especially Georg L. as the CEO, Simone Bohnenberger-Rich as the Chief Product Officer, and Alon Lavie, VP of AI Research. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Very nice to have you, and thanks for the opportunity to speak to me. Recently, you had an interview, Georg, and I would like to use a short phrase where you said that phrase is an agnostic SaaS provider that delivers the best for the customer. And one of the things that I want to confirm is that when we speak to the clients, when we are having conversations to them, they appreciate the flexibility with, for example, with the next MT being just one of the possible options, depending on their needs, right? And another one, when we actually talked about last time, is the phrase orchestrator. And because the biggest challenge whenever we're consulting the buyers, they say, I need to do a lot of change management. I need to convince my internal stakeholders that I need to have a team doing integrations, building stuff. We need to skip some of the major developments that we did in the past, and we don't want to throw money out of the window. And you don't need to wait for engineering teams to be ready to integrate for their in-house tools with phrase, especially with the phrase orchestrator. And today we're here especially because Phrase has hired a team in Philadelphia led by the famous Alon Lavie.
In Pittsburgh, not Philadelphia, but it's close. It's pretty close.
Pretty close. Okay. Okay, great. And then I have another short statement here, Georg, when you said that Phrase is a combination of at least 6 competitive tools on the market, which with the current state of development at Phrase, not even considering the product roadmap.
Correct. Yeah.
So you have a major development announcement every quarter. Last time we spoke, it was the phrase orchestrator, and I'm sure that people are extremely curious to hear what's coming out now. So please share the story.
Well, thanks for giving us the opportunity to talk about what we've been up to and what we're planning on doing with you and with your audience. And so I think that in a way, whether it's luck or judgment, Phrase as a company has been building the building blocks for the next generation of localization software really for a long time, because in the origins of the company, since the origins of the company, we've been building API first. So for the 10 plus years, API first. With our current MT aggregation product, Phrase Translate, which we will soon be renaming, but we'll call it Phrase Translate today. And that aggregates 30 different machine translation providers, including our own, but we agnostically auto-select between those providers to give customers the best choice of engine, depending on the content type and language pair. So we've been doing ML solutions for 5+ years. And in the last 2 years, we've been building the workflow tool of the future, this custom configurator, the orchestrator that allows you to pull, every API, every webhook from the entirety of Phrase's capabilities into your own custom, if this, then that branching workflow. And so, the combination of those things around AI, around workflow, and deep capability in the Phrase platform, whether it's the history and the depth of capabilities that we've built in Phrase TMS or Phrase strings, being able to pull all of that together is in workflow. So AI and workflow, those 2 things are 2 out of the 3 key components for us in the future. And the third one is scale. And we have this vision of the future, which is a real-time internet with massive scale, astronomical scale, not 10 or 100 or 1000x the scale today of localization, but really like millions or billions X times the quantum today, because of the nature of real-time generated content, which I think when applied to the websites of the world, i.e. to the storefront, the shop front, the most important assets of many companies, is really game-changing. So AI, workflow, and scale, the 3 big building blocks for us. So what I think people will see in the next release is a very strong focus on AI and some new capabilities for us there, as well as a continuation of historic capabilities, and then the next generation of the workflow tools as well. So we'll further this whole story. And so I think we've become very clear over the last 4 or 5 months in our sort of medium to longer term strategy. And I think that strategy actually coincided perfectly with Alon and his own vision, which I'll let him describe. But when he and Simone and I started to speak a few months ago, kind of first, getting to know each other a little, there was naturally no guarantee that we would be working together, and it was a get to know each other type process. And Simone and I just described, our vision of the future, and we were delighted. And although I don't want to speak for him, I think the feeling was mutual to find this very strong alignment with Alon and his vision. And that alignment, I think, is ultimately what has led to us working together. And I think the two are therefore stronger. So ultimately, we see all of this coming together with enterprises having extremely complex requirements. So an integration into a complex set of inputs, if you like, on the left-hand side of a sort of mental picture, complex workflows which draw on deep capabilities that embrace artificial intelligence at every single stage of localization journey, from and I should say Alon's a particular area of specialty around quality, and he'll dive into it in more detail than I will, but being core to selecting the right engines, to then applying those engines to different problems along the way at multiple stages, and only where absolutely necessary in a very targeted way, then pushing content to humans for review. And then sort of reintegrating the whole thing and back out into a complex set of enterprise outputs, if you like. And the important thing I will just say, although I haven't in this monologue given you the sort of 5-year vision that I've talked about, I have mentioned high volumes. So small percentage human review of a very large volume of highly complex content still is a lot of human review. And so I do think it's important for Phrase to be clear that we do not forecast the end of kind of human in the loop and human expertise being important. We see it playing an important role, but we see an explosion of content, high complexity, and great risk that sort of uncontrolled, costs would run to being very unaffordable, and we would miss the opportunities. And so our role is to be extremely targeted and help enterprises be very targeted in the right human intervention. And if we do that, then I think organizations will be able to take advantage of whole new areas of opportunity to localize content that currently sits untapped. So that's sort of how it all comes together in our minds.
Beautiful. Definitely a wonderful move. Simone, how are the synergies from your perspective? Where do you see, the synergy between what Alon has been doing in the past and where you're heading towards to with the product?
Yeah, plenty of synergies, of course. So let me elaborate. So as Georg mentioned, Phrase already had a strong history of machine learning or MT development in the past. So that's nothing I can ever take credit for, because it was very well in the making and also in the market already. And we really positioned ourselves as what we call an MT aggregator that allows our customers to pick the best engine for their specific use case and their specific asset. And that's sort of best in class to customers as we breathe it. So we have a very strong in-house research team that drove that development, that allowed us to build this market leadership in that area, being that aggregator platform, amongst many other things as well. Where the synergy really comes in now is that machine translation in its own right is good and it's important, but the real key to unlock the value of leveraging different machine learning approaches in this next wave of automation that we're looking at. So we have 3 phases of machine learning, right? Or automation, I think, across industries. One was first rule-based. We started with RPA. Then we added some machine learning for specific use cases. And now with large language models and the latest breakthroughs of Gen AI, we really can drive a 3rd wave of automation that I think will really tackle these hard problems that have been left over, where still 80% of human labor is sort of accumulated, right? The really, really hard problems are now up for grabs. And to do that, it's not just enough to provide our customers with good third-party engines. Really, we need to enable them with a recommender system to understand what engine is the best along the entire end-to-end workflow of localization. That end-to-end workflow isn't just the actual translation of content, right? It starts with the content generation in the first place. Our customers are asking us, what does the future look like for us when we can generate content with large language models? How do we test that this content is good enough? How do we know that? Because we don't have the humans to do that. So that's problem number one, like, is the content good enough? And that's a problem machine learning can solve for you. If the content is good enough, you send this somewhere else, which is how we're embedding this with the orchestrator. A lot of this value unlock will come through quality estimation, which is a machine learning approach that sits outside or on top of machine translation. And that's really where we see, or I see, the biggest synergy that Alon will bring to the table, is to unlock these different machine learning approaches for our customers by telling us, depending on where the asset is and what stage of the end-to-end process, what should happen with it so we can automate the process. And so I think his team is bringing that full expertise to the table. The wonderful thing about Alon, now close your eyes, please, ears, Alon. The wonderful thing about Alon's team is he's not new to this industry, but he's not just a scientist, he's an applied scientist. He has done this before, right? It's not just that his team is sitting in a little dark room and they're producing research papers. They do that too. But they're actually producing applied applications that solve real customer problems. And that is a perfect synergy. That's our philosophy at Phrase. We're not very big into foundational research. Our mandate has always been, we take what's currently in R&D, we take what's best in class, and we make that fit for purpose for our enterprise customers. And Alon fits perfectly into this world. So that's where I see the biggest synergy.
Beautiful. Thank you very much, Simone. And you stole it from me. I was going to say, Alon, I like you because you are an academic who's been working with the large corporations, have the experience there. And my question is, how are you going to implement it here? But before I go there, tell me a little bit story about how this whole transaction go for you.
Well, I think, Georg and Simone basically said it perfectly, before. I'm here exactly for the reasons that Georg and Simone have articulated, that common alignment on vision, on basically where we are, what Phrase has in terms of its strengths, its capabilities, and what the future looks like in the short term and going all the way to longer term. Although we can never predict in this industry. I don't know that we can really predict things more than 2-3 years ahead, and even that we have surprises. But that's exactly why what landed me here. That alignment on both. First of all, really impressed with how well the Phrase translation platform, among all of the major pieces of it, as you've already heard, is really set up and aligned with what's needed at this day and age for accomplishing exactly the vision that Georg articulated very eloquently. And the time, its readiness, and my knowledge, my skills, my strengths, and some of the people that I bring along with me, helping basically unlock that opportunity. I think we really do have a very unique opportunity over the next couple of years to transform this industry, but particularly, lead a transformation or enable a transformation among large enterprise customers and how they do localization and what they localize. And I was just wowed by the opportunity, and the magnet was there, and it drew me to join forces with these extremely capable leaders, individuals, and the team here. You've already heard, I've worked really extensively on translation quality evaluation and on translation quality technology, including my most recent stint last 4 years at Unbabel. We've accomplished a lot, me and the team over, while I was there. I think it's just foundational and critically fundamental to unlocking this opportunity that we just talked about. Fundamentally, AI at this point in time can deliver, automated predictions of translation quality throughout this very complex translation journey, as it was described by Georg and Simone. And that's essential, because without visibility into the impact of any decision along this complex journey of automate, whether it be a machine translation engine, whether it be on the front, as Simone described it, content generated by LLMs, whether it requires, editing or review by humans, and whether they did the job correctly, even if it did go to them, right? Throughout that journey, if we have really accurate and capable AI technology for measuring translation quality, that's the visibility that's necessary in order to give confidence to enterprises that, they're getting basically the desired outcome from what they want. And at scale, at billions of words, of course, humans won't be able to ensure that, right? Or to look at everything that goes through. It's just humanly impossible, right? So quality visibility is the key for everything. And we're going to focus particularly on enhancing already existing capabilities that are in place while I'm coming in here, with all of the work that we've done in the past first and foremost, unlocking that opportunity through translation quality, AI applied to translation quality and translation quality visibility.
Beautiful. You stole all my following questions, but that's okay. I was going to ask, can you go a little bit deeper and deeper? But I think you gave a beautiful picture. However, if there was, one particular thing, or if you want more, what can people practically expect in the coming season? What would that be?
We're going to basically push for, first of all, a consolidated view of translation quality in terms of how it's measured and how it's represented throughout the entire translation journey. We have particular ideas on how to consolidate and create that consolidated, uniform visibility, and it basically will align the way that human experts do translation quality annotation and detection of errors with the predictions that the AI models do. So you'll get, the same kind of score that an AI model might predict at the beginning of the journey or after machine translation will be fully aligned with the kind of translation quality measurement and annotation that humans might do in an LQA step at the end of the journey. That's kind of the first thing that we want to do. We'll then align all of our AI models and enhance them to basically be able to accurately predict as much as possible, using customer data, using open source data, etc. So we'll basically enhance the AI capabilities along those lines, and then we'll basically apply that in much more sophisticated way in decision points inside the workflow process, inside Orchestrator, as you've kind of already heard from my colleagues here.
Beautiful. Thank you very much, Alon. I see, Georg, that this is all going aligned with your vision and individualistic content creation, and how can people have the content created in a way so that it's specifically for them, whether it's on the website or elsewhere. So it's great to see that you're going towards your bigger vision, and we're very excited to hear more. I have a few more questions that are related to the industry. So I don't know if you have a little bit more time or whether you want to cut it here. But again, I don't know how. Okay, great. Yeah. So let me come to the next one, and that is for you, Simone. And as I put in the notes there, it doesn't have to be specific, right? But it's more for the audience of the buyers on who among your clients are the pioneers in adoption of the generative AI? Because we hear a lot about the potential of AI, but what actual implementations are there or have you seen?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think as you know, we have the honor of working with industry-leading institutions, like often market leaders in their own right, who are not just large institutions, but sometimes still growing at 40 to 60% annually themselves, right? So really big, cutting edge and innovative institutions. What we hear, though, throughout the board is that in general, executives keep on asking their teams to innovate and play with large language models. We've seen very little going into production because there's still so many question marks, and there's such a requirement for supporting infrastructure around it. I'll get into that point in a second. That we see a lot of experimentation and innovation, but not much has been moved into production. And I would say, actually, the majority of our, I would say, top customers are playing with LLMs, and it's on their radar. But for example, we've all been to Lockworld, and we had a panel, and I think most of the customers on that panel actually told us very honestly that they're super excited and thrilled, but there's still a couple of open things that we need to close and answer for them before they move that into production, right? And these are questions around reliability. So when you have a large language model and it works with prompts, you have the challenges around prompt engineering in the first place. There's something called prompt drift. Then you need to debug. You need to make sure that these large language models work in production up to scratch. You are not in control of these large language models because they've been trained by someone else. You need to make sure that they continue to perform. There's a lot going into a large language model, right, to make that a precise tool that it should be on the enterprise. And we can solve this, but I don't think our customers are yet gutsy enough and willing enough to put that into production without the supporting infrastructure. And what I mean with supporting infrastructure is ML ops. So very often one of the most underappreciated challenges in machine learning, and now talking from my former background as well, not just about the localization industry, because I think this is applies across the board, no matter where you operate, is really, it's fairly easy to experiment with machine learning, right? You can have your Jupyter notebook and start playing with some machine learning models. But once you move that into production and these models need to work with real life data and actually work in workflows unique to your teams and to the use cases you have at hand, the whole thing falls short quite quickly, which is why I think 70 to 80% of machine learning projects never manage to go into production or never drive any ROI. So the solution to that is really all the tooling you need to understand upfront whether the machine learning models that you're actually building are reliable. Are they going to work in production? Once they're in production, can you monitor them? Can you trust them, right? So Alon works a lot with quality estimation. The reason why everyone is so hooked up on a coherent quality framework is also to understand and trust machine learning in the first place. Right? If I get a prediction, do I know that's true? Is it reliable? And that's sort of a really, really big topic that we can work on. And then the entire, how do I debug a model? Can I check that it doesn't perform anymore? Can I monitor this on an ongoing basis? If it stops performing, do I get any signals? If I get these signals, how do I diagnose and then debug? And that requires a lot of work for our customers. Which you need to typically hire huge data science teams, or we solve that for us, right? And I think sort of that operational layer around machine learning is something that has been underappreciated, and that's something that we are working on here at Phrase, and that's a problem that we're solving for our customers. But I think that's one of the reasons why large language models and other MT tools struggle to get into production.
I think one thing I'd add is that I've seen a little bit out there of companies using these large language models to do what I think of them as being a bit gimmicky little point solutions. I don't mean to be sort of flippant about them, but I see like little solutions that help a translator perhaps be like 10% more effective, and like that's great, but that's really not the problem we're trying to solve, and it's actually an interesting example because these large language models cannot yet be trusted for all the reasons Simone just articulated to do anything of any meaning at scale without human review. So at the moment they're being used to make a translator 10% more effective. Now that's like lovely, but what we're trying to do is help the world generate 1 billion x more content using these models in a way that can be trusted, and that isn't like 10% on the top of a translator. So it's actually almost a really clear example that at the moment these things can't be trusted without extensive human review. What we're trying to do is automate the quality aspect to an extraordinary degree not yet seen, so that the humans are like right at the very end of the process of machine review.
I love the example of SAP, right? Konstantin wrote an article about this, the SAP gathering on LLM implementation around any departments. There was over 500 different solutions that were discussed or offered to the board, and only a dozen, not even, was selected because they either would want an enormous amount of speed or workflow processing, simplification, or they would want over 50% or more than that of cost savings. Only those, models would be put to the next round, because it would have to make such a large impact. And when we're doing those lessons in localization clubs, which comes from, doesn't matter. So the gathering of localization managers in different cities, what we're hearing is that there's a lot of pressure on, as every other department, just like you said it a minute ago, Simone, they are forced to try it out, but with the type of savings, whether it's the speed, whether it's the workflow that they could provide, even if they implemented it, it wouldn't be interesting enough for the organization to implement it in the end. So everyone is curious and super excited in seeing how these things can be implemented in such a way so that it's not painful. And going back to the phrase orchestrator, simplification and providing the solutions to people's fingertips is something that I'm quite convinced that the industry is expecting from you, and maybe from your competitors, of course.
If I could add just a couple of observations here,
Yes.
I think one of the most really interesting things is, the API access to the LLMs is a really, it's a great opportunity to really expand, the experimentation and develop just to wrap our heads around what these LLMs can actually do. And even us on the research side have been working with neural systems for quite some time, and been blown away by some of the capabilities. But these are kind of pilot proof of concept capabilities. The access through the APIs as they are right now, the problem with that is it's great for teams to brainstorm, to come up with new capabilities and new solutions. To put that into production at scale, at large enterprises, that's beyond reach through the current APIs. They don't have the reliability, they don't have the bandwidth, it's expensive. So ultimately, these APIs will evolve and will stabilize, but also certain entities will need to basically bring LLMs in-house and basically have control over them, so they don't change underneath your feet, right? If a provider is constantly updating them, and what worked yesterday suddenly, without your knowledge or control doesn't work today, that's going to be a problem and a risk for enterprises. So on one hand, we can run fast and learn, really exciting new opportunities. And I think it's just remarkable. People initially thought with LLM, is it going to do in translation industry? We're going to replace our machine translation models with LLM models. It's not really about that, right? They can do machine translation, but they can do so many other things in the translation journey. So just exploring and understanding those and developing those proof of concepts is amazing. We can do that today. And as this stabilizes, we will find out basically what this, we'll distill which capabilities are really most important for what we're trying to do, and we'll develop access to stable LLMs that will be able to do this reliably and at scale. And that's what we're kind of building on here at Phrase as well. That's the way we're thinking about it. So
that's great.
Yeah.
That's great, Alon. And there's so much scarcity around the different levels of food chain within our industry we have enough work. And it is reality that the language vendors are losing revenue because of some of the actions or some of the content not necessarily be ending up in their hands. But there is definitely a much bigger opportunity, as Georg was talking about it earlier, and there is more to grow. So, but these insights are very interesting.
I think that's really important, actually, really, really important, because we always are very keen to emphasize at Phrase that we're a friend to the language service providers as well as a partner to the enterprises. And I think that can continue to be true, but I do think that the language service providers also need to embrace these opportunities and really lean into them, and will need to learn new skills. And that many of their customers are not going to have the skills in-house to do machine learning model training, and the language service providers can develop those skills and then provide them. And there will still need to be humans involved in these complex workflows. And so I think there's absolutely a place for language service providers, and we are working closely with a number of them who are really thinking deeply about these things. And they're amongst the most interesting, nuanced, challenging strategy conversations that we have. Like, how do we work this out together? But then you also see some that are, a little bit more head in the sand, and I think that's a shame. But there is an opportunity here. But I do think that there will be, you could see there being kind of a dip and then an explosion of opportunity as well for the language service providers, right? The dip being the early movement of content to machine translation, and the explosion being where generative AI really takes off, and all of the stuff we were talking about, it becomes a massive opportunity for them. There's two key phrases that I think we need to try and embed with the audience here as well. So it's dynamic evaluation. Dynamic evaluation and quality visibility. And I think we're going to hear those two phrases a lot from Phrase in the coming months and years as we define that next generation of localization software.
Very excited to hear more about that, Georg. Thank you very much for sharing. Okay, I will steal 4 more minutes of your time with 4 questions. And it will be about the industry. So you probably know that next week the Technology Atlas by Nimdzi is coming out, where we compare almost 1,000 different tools in the language service industry. And this year we have over 130 different products in TMS market, including Phrase. In 5 years from now, will there still be space for traditional TMS, Georg?
So I think that I have seen in a number of industries in my career, because I've, as many people know, I'm new to localization. I've worked in different industries. And what one often sees is that these industries develop with highly fragmented marketplaces of lots and lots of vendors, providing point solutions. And that is part of the maturity curve. But that what happens as these industries mature from a technology perspective is you get consolidation. And I think you get consolidation, and you also get, certain solutions that break through that have very broad offerings. And I think that's what we're seeing here already today. So at Phrase, we talk about being the superset of at least 6 companies. And I don't tend to mention the names of those companies in interviews because I don't want to embarrass them, but I'm very happy to talk about them with customers or with you afterwards. But, like reputable companies that you would see with stands at the trade shows and so on. I think that today we can, with confidence and accuracy, talk about being 80 to 90% of the capability set of those 6 companies combined here at Phrase, because we combine, strong enterprise TMS, we combine software and localization with strings, the workflow tool with Orchestrator, the MT aggregator with Phrase Translate. We'll have these new capabilities that we launched in September around machine learning, and we have quality estimation already built into the whole platform. We do website localization as well. So I think you're already seeing in Phrase a consolidation opportunity here, where customers can choose to put more and more of those workloads through one vendor. So I think that it becomes much more difficult in 5 years' time to be a successful standalone TMS provider. And so I don't think we will see 130 TMS providers in 5 years' time. I think we'll see fewer and fewer standalone TMS because it won't make sense anymore. And I think actually the data that our customers have built up over a decade plus of using our translation memory will be applied in machine learning in whole new ways. And there'll probably be a different way of conceiving of the value that we provide that is much broader than TMS. So where you'll see Phrase in this sort of TMS category, I wonder if in the future actually the TMS category won't be a TMS category. It'll be something much broader, encompassing machine learning in a different way. So yeah, no, the short answer is no. I should perhaps have started.
Thank you very much, Georg. Great answer, great connection to the other verticals. Alon, with the influence or implementation of AI, how might the TMS market transform, in your opinion?
Well, I think it's already kind of happening, and Georg kind of hinted at this, but translation memories basically are fundamentally in this new world database or the data store of company-specific, enterprise-specific assets for translation, right? And they are the key for machine learning to deliver enterprise-specific and appropriate translation output and content. Whereas, they were invented originally in order to do, to be a tool in the hands of translators for doing, full matches and 101% matches and fuzzy matches. That can basically be retired. That thinking of them, of translation memories as a productivity tool for translators needs to be retired. But that is, in fact, the focus is really on using enterprise-specific data in ways that allow machine learning to leverage it as best as possible. So TMS, again, I think that ties directly to the question you asked. I think TMS in its traditional sense is really, transforming and largely kind of exiting the scene. And, the center point of AI leveraging enterprise-specific assets and resources to drive complex translation processes is assuming center stage. And that's basically where phrase is positioned as well.
Mm-hmm. You have the 20-year age or generation shift, right? When people are used to a certain type of software solution, processes, whatever. And then you have a shift, and then suddenly the new generation comes in with a new expectation, with something that they would like to use. And so I like the way that you put it. There is many of those that are still thinking in perspective of a CAT tool, but who knows if it's going to be 2 years or 3 years time when no one will care about CAT tool anymore because their expectation will be much higher, right?
Look, CAT tools are still going to be important because exactly as Georg pointed out, there is still work to be done by humans in correcting and delivering, accurate translations, where AI can't fully do the job, right? So there will be AI also brought much more significantly into bear in the CAT tool itself, but the nature of what the CAT tool does is going to be different. It's not going to be, the way human translators were using it, 5 or years ago or even today.
Okay. Simone, how much of the content process in phrase today is human only with no empty implementation?
I think there are lots of variables that drive if customers are ready to implement empty solutions or not. So first of all, the majority of our customers is using our empty solutions, which is, I think, nice. It's great to see, which gives us a lot of data as well, and is the reason why we're doubling down on the space. It comes down to a couple of factors. Your internal use case, right? What type of asset are we talking about? Is it a hyper-complex marketing asset that you only churn out once a year? Then probably you don't need to automate because you do this job in 90 minutes, right? So no volumes. What's the maturity of the actual customer or their willingness to adopt machine learning? There is still a lot of education to be done for customers to touch machine learning and to trust it. That's also true for any industry. Localization is no different from that. So it's the maturity of the customer, their willingness to embrace it. It's the use case, the asset, the language pair. There are lots of variables that drive it. But the bottom line is that the majority of our customers are using MT. The question is how much of it do they use? But I think most of them are actually customers of our machine translation offering, which is really great. And then the next question is how much do they actually automate the end-to-end workflow? But the majority of them are on MT already. Mm-hmm. I think you find very few people in the industry now who would say today, we don't want to do anything with machine learning, especially not what we've gone through in the last 9 months. The question is more, how can we get started? What can we do?
It is definitely. It's more of a question that we're receiving from the individual linguists, right? And I heard Georg definitely speaking about the importance of individuals being there and still being part of the process, whether it's from many different directions. Now, today we're talking about automated translation. We're talking about qualification of the outcome, right? Alon and his big mission here. The question is, will there still be a need for a purely human? Or what will be the role? Because what we're telling the individuals is keep up with the latest trends. You will still be needed, right? 20 years ago, we've been telling them, become an expert in a certain field because that's going to help you. 10 years ago, we've been using more and more field experts, doctors, to translate if they're, bilingual, if they're native in multiple languages for their, content or quality assurance and so on. Now, what do we tell or who do we look for in the coming seasons? That's the question.
Yeah. So I think my position there hasn't changed. I think language service providers and linguists are going to be critical in this whole world of machine learning in the future as well. Their role will just change. When you think about machine learning, domain expertise is ultra important. What type of data do I need to feed my machine learning models? What's a really good translation? These are all things that we're still the judge of, right? And that we're teaching our machines. So I think where the world is going is that language service providers will still have a job. They will be very important, but they will move much closer into the AI world and the generation of AI models, right? They will become the consultants and the experts on, do you have enough data? Is your data good enough? How do we train these models? What do you need to think through in your end-to-end? So I think the world will still need humans and a lot of them, but they need to change their skill. Their focus is no longer is yes, yeah in German or not. Their focus is more, okay, with the language pair you have in mind and the asset type you have in mind and what you set out to do and the data you have in your translation memories, what can you actually do?
From my perspective, my mind, all that specialization that has been happening is still very, very useful, and that momentum is going to continue. A lot more kind of copy editing, specialized work in specialized domains, and a lot less, raw translation from scratch, basically. You still need bilingual experts in that domain to do, the final review and copy editing for different types of content that require that special touch. But it's going to be a lot less mechanical translation and a lot more applying your specialty on ensuring that the final, output generated, the final content in that target language really meets its purpose, right?
Thank you, Alon. Simone, Alon, Georg, it was lovely to speak to you today. I'm very excited to speak to you in 3 or 4 months from today and listen to what has been developed. There's a lot of expectations from Alon. There is definitely a great plan and the journey that you've expressed today on phrase telling me when I'm doing my translations, Joseph, your translation is wrong, go back and do your work better. So I'm looking forward to it, and I'm looking very forward to hear from our customers even better feedback on how you're simplifying their lives. I really appreciate that. Thank you.